Hello, everybody. Thank you for coming along tonight. It's great to see everybody here. What I don't want you to all do is go away and put the kettle on or run away because the phrase employment rights has come up on your screen. Don't worry, I'm not going to lecture you about pieces of legislation or anything like that. I just want to try and cover some of the things that for your own benefit, actually any point in your career, but I would say more so in terms of preparing for your new teaching job, whether you've got one or when you're building up to go into one, and hopefully you'll all get your jobs that you deserve and you've worked so hard for. And it's an overview on what and why it's important to know it, because you will get more out of your new jobs and getting the best job for you the more you understand what your rights are and what your entitlements are and what policies and how decisions are made. So it may sound a wee bit boring, but actually it is really, really important. And here are some of the reasons why. For some reason, it's not skipping along. Okay, my PowerPoint's not moving.
Do you want us to share it, Ruth, or is it just not budging?
Oh no, there it is. It's working now.
Okay, perfect.
Working now. Okay. So these are some of the main reasons why employment rights and terms and conditions are important, and I'll tell you what the difference is in the two. Employment rights are legal rights. They're set in statute, and employment rights in the United Kingdom are set by Westminster. And these are all the general things about legislation that covers everybody. Now, I'm certainly not asking you to go away and find out about rules, but it's really important to understand that everybody is entitled to their employment rights that's set in statute. Terms and conditions are things that are negotiated at Scottish level, because Scottish education is run differently and it's a devolved matter from Westminster, and everything's negotiated in terms of your terms and conditions at the Scottish Parliament, and with a tripartite group, which is the unions, COSLA, your local authority employers, and the Scottish Government. So whether it be your employment rights or your terms and conditions, most of these key points here in the presentation page are really relevant. They are absolutely the framework to your job. They are the key elements that structure your job, and on a daily basis, terms and conditions are so important. So for instance, one of your terms and conditions negotiated at national level is the basic minimum around what should be happening with your work time agreement. And that has a direct impact on the hours you're supposed to work, the hours you're paid for, and that then links to something Andrea was talking about, which is how many teachers should there be. They apply to everyone. It applies to everybody in the teaching profession, and they are there to ensure equity in the workplace and fairness in the workplace. And if you don't know what they are, you will not know that you're being treated equitably and fairly. They protect, and they're supposed to protect against exploitation. And again, if you don't know what you are entitled to, you won't know. They were fought for, and this is a really important thing as trade unionists, they were fought and won by people that came before you. You actually have in the teaching profession, in particular in Scotland, because it's very, very different in England and Wales. They don't have national terms and conditions as such like we do up here. So the ones that you've got are there because people stood up for them, and they have to be respected for doing that. You actually have some very, very good terms and conditions, and there's very few professions left that actually have national terms and conditions like you do. So they are a legacy to be defended. It's all about your future protection as well. You're just starting off in your journeys now, but you would like to have at least the same, if not better conditions by the time you get to the end of your career. And they do come with a responsibility, which is really, really important. And without unions, it wouldn't happen in real terms. And that's the EIS, and that's the employment rights, fighting for them, as well as the individual things. I'm getting an annotation request from Mary Green. Sorry. Okay, so one of your main terms and conditions is your pay. So it isn't all about money. it's really important it's early in your career, because what sets your starting pay early in your career is negotiations with your trade union and that tripartite group that we talked about earlier. And I'll refer to it a wee bit in more detail later. It's the SNCT. So it is decided by your employers, government, and yourselves as members. When there was a pay campaign a few years ago, it was members fighting for that. They got one of the biggest pay increases in the public sector with no strings attached, I would say, in the last 30 to 40 years. It was an astonishing thing. And it was members in the EIS and their participation in it, along with the negotiating done by officials, that got that pay rise. And so in terms of what it is for you, and it will be again in the future terms, do you just not participate and let things go with the flow, or do you participate, and the more that do, the better outcome you'll get? And that's why being in the EIS is so important. It's why being in a trade union for any of your terms and working conditions are so important. And I know a lot of people will say it's a vocation, you didn't do the job for the pay, you love teaching, you just have always wanted to be a teacher, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. But your job deserves respect, and to get that respect, you need to be paid at least what the minimum we think you should be deserved for your job. I've never met a teacher yet, I'm not a teacher myself, but I've never met a teacher yet who doesn't work more than the 35 hours. You work a lot of unpaid overtime, and that's for the love of the job. But the one thing I would say to you is, please remember, when you use the term vocation or you hear other people, if you look at it in the dictionary, it doesn't say slavery. It is actually, your vocation doesn't mean, to be a vocation does not mean you shouldn't get paid the right way for the job. And the fact is, it's not up to the employer what you get paid just. A lot of people you might hear say, well, they pay my wages. Well, actually, no, you earn your wages, and you have as much as a right in a civilized society to have a say about what happens in that way. So that's why it's not all about money, it's about what you do. Pensions may sound to you all very boring. They're not. I'm somebody near the end of my career in the beginning, and I can assure you they're extremely important. And it's something, again, that due to the involvement of the EIS, people before you, you have one of the better pension schemes left in the public sector. Pensions were attacked some years ago for everybody in the public sector, and you're never too young to think about it. I won't dwell on that, but please, if you just remember what I'm saying to you, pensions are very, very important. You're not in a general scheme, you're in the teacher's pension scheme, which is one of the best remaining pension schemes in the country. There was a change to make the scheme that's there now worse than previously, so it isn't as good. However, another union challenged one of those changes, or a few of those changes, on age discrimination in terms of the cut-off point, and they won. And that will have a very positive influence on all public sector pensions, including the one that you're in now. Now, there's people who might say you could spend your money elsewhere, that's fine. Why should you be in the teacher's pension scheme? Well, because it is such a good one. You can't guarantee anywhere else that your money is as safe. You can invest additionally if you feel you need to or you want to, but you should be in the teacher's pension scheme. And the more people that are in the teacher's pension scheme, the healthier it is, and the healthier it is, the better it is for those that are contributing and that are in it. And again, it's like anything else in your terms and conditions. Your work pension is set and negotiated and defended where it needs to be defended and improved by your trade union, and you are your trade union. Terms and conditions in general are, as I say, your day-to-day working conditions, and they are really, really important to what happens. As I mentioned earlier, you've got your work time agreement. That is one of your terms and conditions. And they help you, because where things aren't going the way that you think they should be going, they're your defence mechanism, they're your backdrop to what you can go back and say, well, this is what my contract, and your terms and conditions of Scottish teachers are actually in your contract. And contracts are the bottom line. They're the things that really, really count in employment, is what's in your contracts. This is where I was talking to you, and I'll try and be brief here. I don't want to get into all the logistics too much about it, but your national terms and conditions in Scotland are negotiated at the Scottish Negotiating Committee for Teachers. And there is a handbook, and I think Dan's actually going to put the link to the SNCT in the note for you, so that you can see in the chat box and take a read the link and look at it. And again, this is where I refer to the fact it's government, it's tripartite, it's government, it's COSLA, your national employers, and it's the unions. What is really key here in terms of the EIS is that the EIS, because we represent over 80% of teachers in Scotland, and given that there is such a high density of trade union membership generally in Scotland, it's extremely high. We by far have the biggest influence at the SNCT when it comes to the representative bodies, as we call it, so that's the union team. The SNCT main things are pay, the main duties of teachers, so it's what your job is, so that's really, really important. Your working year and your working week, annual leave, class size, all that list, sickness and allowance notification arrangements, family leave, discipline and grievance, and other provisions. Now, there's a lot more in the SNCT handbook, but as I say, I don't want to go into that anymore, but you can look at the link at another time. There's also what's called LNCT, and that is your local negotiating committee for teachers. So for instance, if you work in East Lothian Local Authority and you're a member of the EIS Local Association in East Lothian, there are local things that will be determined and negotiated locally in that area by your officials and by you as you're participating in your local area. And these determine, there's a lot of things that might say influence your work time agreement again. If the local authority have a few things they want you to emphasise in schools, say in East Lothian, they will tell that'll be filtered out and negotiated, and then that would be part of your daily term time. Also, there's things not covered by the SNCT. They may have policies on things that aren't particularly in your SNCT agreement. And it's also, you can have an improvement on the SNCT agreement in your local agreements. Local terms, procedures and policies, so your sickness policies, how you report violent and aggressive behaviour procedures, these will all be negotiated locally, and that's really important. So that's your local input that you want to be looking at. One of the phrases as a non-teacher I've heard since the day I became an employee of the EIS was that, and I think it's one of the best ones, is that teachers' work conditions are students' learning conditions. And it's so important and it's so reflective that if you get your rights right, you're actually also making it right for the pupils that you're teaching in your schools. And that's a really, really important thing. Working conditions are not just about the building you work in. They're not just about the formal things. They're about the teaching profession. And if anybody saw Larry Flanagan on the news today when we were talking about the SQA, there's been a lot on today about that, and given what's happened over the past year and a half in exams and how they're going to be assessed, etc. One of the things that's been key always is professional trust in teachers. It's one of the things that teachers complain is not given to them, and it's something that absolutely should be, and certainly something Larry mentioned in his TV interviews. But the teaching profession and getting professional trust is a two-way street. It's based on relationships. I hadn't heard of the word collegiality until I joined the teaching profession, but it's a great word, and it's the meaning behind it is fantastic. But again, that's a two-way street. Your view and your professional abilities and trust are so important, and that's about building relationships. And the trade union is about building relationships. It's about respecting each other, and it's not just on a day-to-day thing. It's about respecting that you have skills and that you're the teacher, and that there are different ways. Hierarchies do not work well for respect. It's not about you've got somebody in charge, therefore you have to do everything you're told. It's about respecting that somebody maybe has a role with more responsibility and a higher salary than you, but you deserve as much respect as they do. And that's about working together as a team. And that's the same as a trade union. And rights are also not just about things that are written down on pieces of paper. It's about, again, professionalism. It's about trust, and it's respect. So in terms of what we hope to see and hope to, especially when you've heard some of the things you've raised today about the problems that you're having in terms of getting employment, etc. What is the best way to move forward in terms of employment rights, in terms of national terms and conditions, apart from being in a union, excuse me, is to participate, protect what you've got and improve on what you've got. So the bottom line is, as a union, your employment rights and your terms and conditions will only be defended and improved if you as members keep involvement in the union. And there's nobody better, in my view, to tell anybody what they need than the people that are in the profession or in the union itself. So your working conditions can be really good or can be really bad. You can determine what that would be. You can determine if you're willing to accept a negative workplace or if you want to do something to make it a positive workplace. And working together for safe places, and I don't just mean physically safe, but that is really important. But it's about safe in terms of everything, and Dan will cover a bit more of that soon. Do use your knowledge of your terms and conditions. Do find out about them, have them to hand, and know where you can find them if you need them, because they are so important to making your job work for you and keeping you healthy and making a better workplace. And recognise that you have a key role in this. Participation is a word that organisers use all the time. It's so important. You participate in your profession, and it's just as important that you participate in your union. The way that I like to see EIS or unions as is we're kind of your workplace mammy, if you like. And yes, your mammy is to be fix things and do things for you, but a good mammy listens, and you have to actually talk to them, and communication is so important. So it is your profession. It's absolutely your union, and it's your choice. Thank you.